Oh, we'll do a group hug. Let's do a group hug. Just kind of gentle, because I'm small. Awesome. Oh, I might spend my entire talk in the audience. This is wonderful. Thank you. Oh, there's more. I'm not done. So the question is, why would anyone hug a stranger? But what if I told you there are no strangers? We're not so different, you and I. Every one of us has a story. We all have our own challenges, our struggles, hopes, dreams, and fears. And when we reach out to someone, when we step across our comfort zone, we realize we are far more similar than we are different. I was not born this way. There was a journey to this point of view. My family was not the hugging kind. People are often surprised to hear that. We were like four strangers living underneath the same roof. My father, a Vietnam War veteran, was often suicidal. And as a teenager, my brother turned to alcohol for comfort. I longed for closeness and connection. And then 2008, I moved to New York City, a dream come true. So many people, so many possibilities. And you wouldn't think anyone could be lonely, especially a storyteller. But I was, desperate to connect, just like everyone else. And then free hugs found me. A couch surfer invited us to hug people in Union Square. Hug strangers? Well, all right, it's New York City, and anything is possible. So we gathered with our signs overhead, our arms open, and I was ready. Or was I? I was not at all prepared for the depth of what followed. First, the skepticism. Is this a cult? What are you selling? What's your real agenda? Nothing's free. And I shared what little I knew. No, it's not a cult, and yes, it's free, and there's no agenda, it's just a hug. It was all started by one man, one sign, open arms, and it's gone viral in a good way. People were still not convinced. And then finally, one woman approached. I'd love a hug, she said, and we embraced. And then soon, others followed, and that's because we are hardwired for joy. When we see someone else experience joy, we want to experience it too. And after about 30 minutes, I was hooked. I was hooked on hugs. And there's science behind why I was hooked. Touch is the first of our senses to develop. And when we are touched by a person, there are signals, messages sent to our brain. And those messages are of comfort, security, happiness. We release a powerful chemical called oxytocin. It lowers our blood pressure, it slows our heart rate, it literally makes us feel better. And I definitely saw this during free hugs. People visibly relaxed. Their stress turned to smiles and thank yous. And it was the same across all cultures, ages, socioeconomic backgrounds, from teenagers to a man celebrating his 98th birthday, from the destitute to Wall Street executives. I'd noticed him before, always wearing the same jacket, the same sweatpants. He walked up to me one day and he said, "Do you hug people like me?" I smiled and I said, "Teenagers, of course." No, I mean people like me." "Black teenagers?" I responded. He scowled. He took another step closer. He said, No, do you hug people like me?" "I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're asking." "Homeless people. Do you hug homeless people?" I opened my arms and I said, "Yes, honey, I hug everyone. Come here." Now, the truth, he was the first identified homeless person I'd ever hugged, but he was not the last. He melted into my arms, lingering for a long while, and when he was ready, I let go. "Can someone like me do free hugs?" he asked. A teenager? Of course you can. I reached into my bag and I gave him paper and a pen and he made his own sign. And soon he was hugging people all over Union Square. And as I watched, I realized he was hugging the other homeless people. And from that day forward, whenever I saw him, he always had his free hug sign with him. And a few months later, people in the park told me he wasn't homeless anymore. I don't know if it was that hug that changed things for him, if in that brief moment of connection, he realized he has value as a human being, and he has a name. It's Jeremy. Jeremy impacted me deeply. Because of Jeremy, I started seeking out other homeless people and offering hugs to them, and I have never been turned down. We are desperate for human touch. As you've heard today, we are connected by technology in ways that are incredible. Some say we're more connected than ever before, but we long for and we need human touch. Human touch is often actively discouraged, according to Dr. Tiffany Field, and she says we may be suffering from something she calls touch hunger. Free hugs make such a deeper impact than people realize. In that moment of allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, stepping out of our own comfort zone, it opens a connection, deep communication. It's happened all over the world. I started carrying my free hug sign with me everywhere I went, and everywhere it was the same experience. People shared the most intimate details of their lives. I just lost my job. I don't know how I'm going to tell my wife. In this city of 8 million, I just feel so alone. I haven't been touched in nearly 20 years. Do you hug people like me? Free hugs opened up a whole new way of seeing the world, a world where there are no strangers, only human beings, every one of us with a story. And no matter what our culture, religion, government, skin color, we are not that different from each other. And free hugs are symbolic. They're one of 1,000 ways that we can reach out to one another. We can step across that comfort zone and connect, and this world is getting smaller and smaller, moment by moment. For me, free hugs were like a gateway to deeper connection. I was guest lecturing, Mälardalen University in Sweden. We all introduced ourselves. Hi, I'm Kristin Pedemonti, and I'm a storyteller from the United States. I'm interested in how stories connect across culture and how we can build bridges between. Abe introduced himself last. The only man in the class, his hands were clenched in fists in his lap, and he shared his story. I'm Abe from Iraq. We had to flee the country when your country invaded mine. My uncle was killed, my father very badly hurt. I was 11 years old and terrified. We fled Iraq. We moved to Sweden where we are accepted and we are at peace. And I hate Americans, all Americans. I had no idea what to say. His feelings were understandable given his circumstances. I took in a deep breath and I thanked him for being so open and so honest. That took courage. I had already planned to share stories of kindness and understanding, of connecting, and I was more determined than ever to somehow build a bridge between us. And all that day, we shared folk tales from the different cultures represented, and we started sharing personal stories of illnesses, relationships, what it was like living in another country, our struggles, our hopes, our dreams, and our fears. I shared about my own sadness about the war in Iraq, for the lives lost, for my cousin's life that will never be the same, and stories of understanding, seeing the human being and not the man-made border. At the end of the 6-hour class, Abe said he wanted to speak to me, and I asked if he wanted to talk in private. No, in front of the class, he said. And that's when he shared a different viewpoint. Kristin, before I met you, I hated Americans, And then today, you share stories of kindness, and you show how we're all connected. You shared your heart today. And because of you, I don't hate anymore. I was speechless. It was the power of story. When we share our story and see that human being and not a stereotype or a stranger, and we realize how truly interconnected we are. He took such a deep risk in opening his heart, stepping across that bridge and meeting me. Listen, Abe, I don't know if it's culturally appropriate, but I really want to hug you right now, if that's okay with you. Yeah, I would like that. We embraced. I cried. It was such a powerful moment. It stays with me forever. And Abe and I are still friends. I returned to Sweden last year, and we met for lunch. He brought me flowers, and yes, we hugged. He invited me to meet his family, but I needed to leave that day because I had other commitments. So Abe, if you're listening, I really want to meet your family. Let's do that next time I'm in Sweden. I ask you to take a moment and listen to someone's story. Really listen. Ask them how they are and then really listen to the answer when they talk to you. Step outside of your comfort zone and connect. You might be somewhat surprised by the depth of the interaction which follows. We are so interconnected. And I understand that I come from a different culture, and some of you may be saying, but how? How do I do that? That's not part of my culture, or I'm really shy. I don't know how to do that. And it might sound really simple. Listen to your heart. Often our heart tells us to do something. It might be a small thing, it might be a big thing. And instead of listening, we get all entangled and focused on the how, and we start to listen to the fear in our head. That fear is often irrational. If you listen to your heart knows what to do. Your heart has wonderful instincts. Your heart does not see a stranger. Your heart sees a human being. Hannah Brencher, 24 years old, is the founder of The World Needs More Love Letters. Hannah followed her heart. Hannah is very shy by nature, and she was living in New York City, and one morning she was on the subway, and she looked out across the aisle at the woman sitting across from her, and that woman looked as sad as Hannah felt. And Hannah decided to do something. She got out paper and pen, and she did what she knew how to do. She started to write a letter. She started to write a letter to that woman sitting across from her on the subway, and Hannah became so involved in writing that letter, she did not notice when the woman got up and left the subway train. But rather than be discouraged, Hannah left the letter behind for someone else to discover, and she felt better. That year, Hannah wrote 400 letters, leaving them all over New York City for people to find. And in 2 years' time, her project has gone global. 47 countries, hundreds of people listening to their hearts and sharing letters with people they never met. Brandon Stanton, he's a photographer, and he specializes in showing everyday people in New York City. His project is aptly titled Humans of New York. And he takes photographs of all these different people, just showing them in their everyday lives, and often he'll put a little story about the person, a small caption. He traveled to Iran a few months ago, and he was invited to take his project there. And he photographed the humans of Tehran. And if you look at the images, if no one told you that mother and child were in Iran, they could be anywhere in the world. He did a beautiful job of showing how we are all so much more similar than we realize. Now, some leaps are a lot bigger than others. Some people take really large risks out of their comfort zone. Irena Sendlerova from Warsaw was a Catholic social worker during World War II. And as the Warsaw Ghetto was being constructed, she kept thinking about those children. What is happening to those children? And she couldn't not do something. So she listened to her heart. She risked her life time and again entering that Warsaw Ghetto and rescuing children. 2,500 children. She was captured in 1942, brutally beaten, and she was supposed to be executed. But the person assigned to the task, he knew people that were connected to Irena. And maybe, just maybe, because he didn't view her as a stranger, her life was spared, and she found homes for all of those children. Now, as I said, not all leaps are as big as Irena's. I took my own leap across the comfort zone. I listened to my heart, and in 2005, I quit my full-time job, sold my home and almost all of my possessions to create and facilitate a volunteer literacy project in Belize. It started with 1 village, and then it was 2, and then it was 10, and before I knew it, somehow I donated programs for over 33,000 children and trained more than 800 teachers how to use their own stories in the classroom. But the bigger learning for me, that happened outside of the schools as I traveled village to village, and people I never met before, they invited me into their homes. They fed me. They treated me like one of the family after knowing me for such a short time. And they taught me such an important lesson. When we listen to our heart, when we trust, when we take a step outside of our comfort zone, the world responds in ways we might never anticipate. And this year, starting in June, I'm invited to take my project to Kenya, Ghana, and India. I have no idea exactly how it's all going to come together, but I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm going to trust that somehow it's going to work out. So I ask you to listen to your heart, to reach out across your comfort zone to someone in whatever way works for you, to share your gift for someone. Our world is so much more interconnected, and our very survival depends upon the fact that we all understand and realize what happens all across the world, it affects us all directly and deeply. There are no strangers. There are only human beings. And if anyone needs a free hug, you just look for me and my sign.